Good morning, everybody. My name is Francisco Dahlmeyer. I'm the director of the Center for Conservation and Sustainability of the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. Welcome to the webinar of Building Back and Better Climate Action and Carbon Neutral Traveling. In this opportunity, we have the case of Peru. GreenInitiative, LimaTours, Inkaterra, and the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute are very excited to bring you a panel of experts on the case of climate actions and carbon neutral travel in Peru. Several international speakers with a global perspective will share their expertise on the post-COVID-19 green tourism recovery. Panelists will briefly cover the global role and opportunities of the tourism industry regarding climate actions and how carbon neutral certification mechanisms work. You will also learn how carbon compensation can easily be integrated into your offerings to match your goals and attract mindful travelers. Who will end up emerging from the COVID-19 crisis in this sector? The COVID-19 pandemic has brought travel to a standstill, with tourism being strongly impacted. Travel agencies, tour operators, transportation, tour guides, hotels, natural and cultural assets, and many other tourism actors worldwide are trying to survive the down economy. According to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, their global guidelines, COVID-19's projected impact for the tourism in 2020 fell by 75%. This means the loss of some $1.1 trillion in international tourism revenues. This is really significant. Who will end being ahead of this process, emerging in a way that is sustainable for the crisis in the ecotourism sector? At this stage of the crisis, we cannot accurately answer, and there is not a single solution. We are convinced that going back to the old business as usual model is no longer efficient and successful. For the future of tourism, sustainability is key to have the tourists at the front line. Tourists are looking for sustainability examples of shifting to carbon neutrality as part of the solution. They want to be part of the solution. According to several studies, international tourism stands close to 8% of the total carbon emissions worldwide. This is really significant. This highlights the tourism industry's responsibility and the opportunity to engage in a positive climate action agenda that can contribute to building tourism back and better, the purpose of this meeting. The new profile of the modern tourism consumers is concerned about the environment and climate. This is something that we know, we've been dealing with for many years, and now it's in front of our faces. They are willing to support sustainable travel in some fashion. This is why the travel industry is expanding their options to meet this demand. We have to become flexible, we have to adapt, and we have to change. This growing trend requires the tourism sector, destinations, and government to comply with new regulations, sustainability standards, and climate responsibility. What are those? Well, there are many fronts that are being developed in this particular situation, and we have to address those, we have to diversify, and we have to expand. The sustainability challenge is to be part of the carbon neutral solution. We have to be part of that solution. That solution is coming big, and we are going forward with it. There are 3 levels of climate action that can provide significant and value added to destinations, to companies, and to travelers. At the destination level, we need to strongly promote carbon neutrality. align with private and public investments in climate mitigation and adaptation, and have a clear example of how to do this. In this case, the government of Peru in Machu Picchu got together with the municipality of Machu Picchu, the AGE group, the Peruvian hotels, the ACTE, and made Machu Picchu the first carbon neutral wonder of Peru and possibly of the world. At the company level in Peru, we have been working with tourism operators to implement carbon mitigation and offsetting measures while engaging with travelers. Travelers are really excited. They want more of it. They want to participate. They want to contribute. These engagements include commitment for energy and waste reductions, reforestation, and offsetting traveling through carbon credits. This is one of the targets that we are achieving here. Now, let me introduce the first panelist of this webinar. With great pleasure, I would like to introduce our first distinguished panelist, Virginia Fernandez Trapa. Virginia is a program officer at the Sustainable Development of Tourism Department of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. Virginia is also the coordinator of the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program, which promotes sustainability best practices within the tourism sector. She's also the coordinator of the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative in collaboration with the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, and also the MacArthur Foundation. This is a global framework for acting to drive the tourism sector towards a circular economy for plastics. This is a really, really important issue. Virginia has conducted research on the environmental dimensions of sustainable tourism, including sustainable consumption and production, biodiversity and climate protection, and the integration of circularity in the tourism value chain. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Virginia Fernandez Trapa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for the introduction and your kind words. Hello, greetings to everyone from Madrid. I'd like to thank the organizers of this webinar, GreenInitiative, Inkaterra, and LimaTours for the invitation, and thanks to all participants for their interest in this important topic. It is a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to frame the discussion with the One Planet vision for a responsible recovery from COVID-19. The One Planet vision calls for a recovery which is founded on sustainability to underpin the resilience of the tourism sector. It calls for the transformation of the sector to better balance the needs of people, planet, and prosperity. The One Planet vision reflects the collective views of the members of the Sustainable Tourism Program of the One Planet Network, which is a multi-stakeholder partnership that aims to scale up sustainable consumption and production practices to address three major global challenges of pollution, biodiversity loss, and climate change. I have to say that the timing of this webinar is very right, as the United Nations is celebrating Sustainable Development Goal 13 on climate action during this month of December to mark the 5th anniversary of the adoption of the Paris Agreement. Before the pandemic, we were already trying to integrate sustainability in tourism, many destinations and businesses having taken salient efforts. Yet, a lot of work was still to be done, as many destinations were facing challenges related to carrying capacity, the overconsumption of natural resources, and impacts on climate change. There were also challenges in terms of policy implementation. For instance, when it comes to references to climate action, or more precisely to greenhouse gas emissions in national tourism policies, during research that we carried out, we could only find these references in less than half of national tourism policies, 42% to be precise. And only very few of the policies reviewed, 27%, contained references to policy instruments that could actually lead to the implementation of those objectives. During COVID, currently, as you know, the tourism sector is facing its biggest crisis, and it is one of the hardest hit sectors by the COVID-19 pandemic. The financial losses registered globally so far are 5 times larger than those recorded in 2009 during the financial crisis, and they come coupled with an unprecedented number of jobs at risk. In the month of June 2020, just to give you an idea, border closures were applied in 75% of global destinations. That is equaling to 163 countries had their borders completely closed. This brought international tourism almost completely to a standstill. Since then, destinations have started easing travel restrictions, meaning they have shifted to less severe travel restrictions, but still almost all of them have some kind of restrictions in place. And even 59 destinations still continue to have their borders completely closed. Health concerns continue and uncertainties prevail, so it is difficult to foresee when tourism will fully resume. UNWTO scenarios point at long time frames from late 2021 to 2023, but this will of course depend on the context of each destination and its dependence on international markets, among others. So meanwhile, the uncertainty, the One Planet vision aims to support the development and implementation of recovery plans, which are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and with the Paris Agreement, and that can actually build the resilience the sector needs. The vision was published back in June 2020 on the occasion of World Environment Day. And since then, we are focusing on transforming the vision into action. It is therefore very nice and useful to be able to connect the case of Peru with the different elements of the One Planet vision. The vision is structured in 3 pillars: people, planet, and prosperity, and it includes 2 blocks of action under each pillar. For instance, under people, the focus has been placed on public health and social inclusion. For planet, we are speaking of biodiversity conservation and climate action. And lastly, for prosperity, we're speaking of circular economy, and also governance and finance are coming in. This vision does not have the vocation of being an exhaustive listing of recommendations, but rather to outline elements that can support a transition to a more sustainable tourism model. When it comes to climate, which is the topic we would like to discuss today, the need to scale up is remarkable. In December 2019, CO2 emissions from tourism were forecast to increase at least by 25% by 2030, making it difficult to stay aligned with international goals. We know that emissions could easily rebound when operations restart, and therefore the need to transform tourism operations continues to be of utmost importance. Measurement of emissions needs to become common practice. Can I get the next slide, please? Across the industry and destinations. The vision encourages the development and monitoring mechanisms that can allow destinations to understand CO2 emissions across the value chain and the CO2 implications of investments to trigger a shift towards climate-aware tourism development and climate-aware tourism promotion. It is because only based on evidence we will be able to accelerate the decarbonization of tourism operations. In fact, enhancing mitigation efforts shall be seen as a competitive advantage. The cost of inaction with regards to climate will be in the long run much larger than the cost of any other crisis. Additionally, there is a growing number of consumers who are demanding that the tourism sector takes responsibility for its CO2 emissions, and they also would like to take part of these efforts. Lastly, supporting the engagement of the tourism sector in adaptation to climate change and carbon removal, and all in all, innovation would be necessary if the sector is to cut emissions by 50% by 2030 and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. As you can imagine, given the magnitude of the challenge, everyone in our sector has a role to play: destinations, businesses, and consumers. In the case of Peru, which my fellow panelists will be presenting, is a good example of how these 3 levels are advancing towards the same objective. So destinations, businesses, and tourists can be united for people, planet, and prosperity. That is all from my side for now. I'm sure the audience is very eager to learn about the case of Peru. I remain available for any further exchanges. Thank you.
Sorry, I briefly lost my microphone here. Thank you very much, Virginia. Wonderful presentation, wonderful vision. It's really a great opportunity now to move from the business as usual before the pandemic in terms of carbon emissions to basically start with this new vision after the pandemic is over, when the process of being over, to become carbon neutral at some point. Indeed, thank you. We'll take some of the questions at the end. Our next speaker is, let me change here briefly. Okay. Okay. Our next speaker is Marcia Regis. She's from the GreenInitiative, is the country representative in Switzerland. The GreenInitiative works with organizations and tourism and destinations seeking to achieve a new standard for climate actions. So you will see some fantastic development that they've been doing. They have a verification, certification, and advisory services that provide support to the different destinations. Companies and travelers can achieve their sustainable and responsible climate action goals, which is something very, very important for the industry and something that's going to be happening more and more in the future. These goals are, of course, connected to the Paris Agreement and with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Marcia, we are looking forward to your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Francisco, for your kind introduction. Thank you very much also, Virginia, for your valuable insights and for setting up the ground for my presentation. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today together with LimaTours and Inkaterra. And we are going to present today the case of climate actions and carbon neutral travel in Peru, and how can we build tourism better in a better way. Can you all see my screen? Yeah. So please let me start introducing our key partners with whom we have been working and collaborating, setting up different tools and working approaches for scaling up action for private and public organizations around the world. Why shifting to carbon neutrality? Why is it important to manage the carbon footprint, and in particular relevant to the tourism sector? Greenhouse gases that occur naturally are essential for human survival because they can prevent part of the sun's heat from spreading into space, maintaining an average temperature on Earth that makes our lives possible. But in the last 100 years, the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and in particular the carbon emissions that results from burning of fossil fuels, has increased to levels never seen before. And as a result, the average temperature of the planet is increasing fast. In December 2019, the United Nations declared a climate emergency, pointing out the need of taking rapid and far-reaching actions to limit global warming current tendency. The United Nations has been making crystal clear to all of us what we are already observing around the world. We see every day in the news information about loss of glaciers, the increase in sea level to almost 1 meter, the increase of wildfires, the collapse of diverse ecosystems, and the loss of wildlife and biodiversity, all of which directly and indirectly affects our lives, our social stability. Naturally, the tourism industry, of course, which relies very much on natural capital and security. According to several studies, the international tourism shares of carbon emissions stand close to 8% of total carbon emissions. This fact highlights very much the responsibility of our sector, of the tourism sector, and the opportunities to engage in a positive climate action agenda, which can contribute to building tourism back better. As you can read in these pieces of news, an increasing number of companies are engaging in climate action. This is what's happening. This is what's happening right now. The fact is that we are living in a new business environment, which is powered by people. People just like you and me, and particularly by a new generations of millennials who are committed to embrace purpose and sustainability. Indeed, one recent report from Harvard University revealed that products with sustainability claimed showed twice the growth of their traditional counterparts. That means that there is a new profile of consumers. Marks which are concerned about the environment and climate have been growing, generating a new ecosystem of green businesses. A recent study carried out by Booking.com on precisely the growing trend and interest in products and responsible consumptions showed that 80%, as you see in the slide, of travelers want to travel more sustainably, but only half of them often or always manage to do so. And 69% of travelers expect the travel industry to offer more sustainable travel options. And this definitely includes a positive response to climate change. This growing trend requires companies in the tourism sector, destinations, and the state to comply with new regulations and standards of sustainability and climate responsibility. Even more, in a context such as today, where there is much discussion about the relation between the pandemic generation generated by COVID-19 and the degradation of ecosystems as a consequence of climate change. So our common challenge in the tourism industry is to build tourism back better. You know, we need to be part of the solution. And how can we be part of this solution? Based on our experience working in the tourism industry since 2010, we have been able to identify these 3 levels for climate actions that can provide significant value added to destinations, companies, and travelers. There are at least 3 ways for tourism to engage in a green climate recovery. Destination level, carbon neutral destinations, such as Machu Picchu will become soon. Company level, carbon neutral companies and value chains. For example, Inkaterra is doing this work for many years. Travelers level, carbon neutral traveling experience. You see the experience of LimaTours on this level. So let's review some practical experience. At the macro or destination level, we should be able to commit tourism destinations to carbon neutrality, promoting private and public investments that are aligned with climate mitigations and adaptation challenges. This should be addressed through national and local authorities and work with the support of private sector and communities. The carbon neutral tourism destination should be able to inspire people and businesses to innovate in products and services that allow them all to achieve concrete carbon reduction goals. We are very proud to be working with the government of Peru, the municipality of Machu Picchu, AHE Group, the Peruvian Society of Hotels and APTAI, making Machu Picchu the first carbon neutral wonder of the world and the first carbon neutral tourism destinations in Peru and possibly in the world. As for the companies level, we have been working in different regions supporting tourism companies to internalize climate actions and implement carbon mitigations and offsetting measures at corporate level. Tourism companies have also a strategic role to improve their climate performance within their value chain. There are huge opportunities for carbon mitigations, making value chains more climate friendly. We are very proud to be working with Joey Keckling from Inkaterra and François Morin from LimaTours, who will soon present their experiences. Also, Professor Dr. Willy Legren from International University Bad Honnef will give his valuable contributions to this webinar. Well, we have spoken about tourism destinations and travel companies internalizing climate actions, but as we said before, also the traveler can be involved in this process. There is a new profile of travelers that look not only for authentic experiences, but also demands safety and sustainability. And I can say that Peru is ready to fulfill this new profile of travelers' expectations. You might be asking now, how can the final travel do their part? They can be offered to offset their travel experience in the destination Peru by joining the Forest Friends project. And how can they do that? They can achieve carbon neutrality by planting trees and supporting biodiversity conservations in hotspots like Madre de Dios in Peru through the Forest Friends project. Our goal is to offset 10 million tons of carbon emissions by 2030. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I would also like to thank AGE Group from Peru, Canatu, Aptai, and Sociedad Hoteles de Peru for their support and important work that they have been doing to internalize climate actions in the tourism sector of Peru. That's it for me. Are you willing to make traveling more carbon neutral? Let us know, and it will be a great pleasure for us to support you. Do not hesitate in sending us an email after the presentation. There is a great opportunity now to build tourism back better.
Thank you, Marcia, for the great presentation. We would love to see the opportunity to learn the process, how you guys are doing this carbon neutral travel. This is something that has to be scaled up many times, and I think this is a great case study to launch at the national level, and also to encourage other organizations within Peru, and of course in the region. Thank you. I'm sure we will have some very interesting questions. Our next speaker is the legendary Joy Kecklin. Is the Inkaterra founder and chairman. Joy established Inkaterra in 1975, pioneering ecotourism and sustainable development in Peru. Was basically the first, one of the first pioneers doing this kind of work, with very, a lot of challenges and limitations at that time. The idea for Joy has been to be able to achieve cultural development, natural resources management through the holistic approach to create added value to rural areas. Scientific research is also part of that process. They do a lot of biodiversity conservation, education, of course, including the well-being of the communities. Inkaterra and Joy has been acknowledged in many different ways. Joy has been acknowledged by the Association of Advanced Collegiate Schools of Business in its 100 influential world leaders. It's quite an honor to have a Peruvian leading this kind of initiatives, being an example for the world. Joy is also the chairman of the Society of Hoteles del Peru and emeritus board member of Conservation International. He has been honored also by the 2017 award of the large enterprise category. The first ever OLA Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016, and the 2015 Pure Award for his contribution to experiential travel. So if you want to know about experiential travel, Joy is the destination. So Joy, please, what a great pleasure to have you as part of this team.
Thank you, Francisco. That's legendary. That makes me feel indebted.
No.
Thank you.
An inspiration for all of us.
Thank you. It's it's a very simple equation. If you like something, if there's something that is meaningful and you wish to show it, to share it, and that's what nature is all about. It's an emotional thing. So when we got to Puerto Maldonado and started in the Amazon rainforest, and started to look up on how to put up a lodge, and then how to keep the area, which was the meaning of the site. So we started ecological research in 1978 in a very scientific way, and in order to what? To conserve the area, but it had to be profitable, so that we could carry on with our own economic means. And who with the local populations, they know about it. And definitely the money source happened to be tourism. Carry on, please. That's the original lodge. Here we built it with chains, not even a chainsaw, sorry. It was in the rough times of Peru with machetes and axes. It was very difficult to start. Now it has evolved. It has evolved into being one of the best places in the world to be in contact with nature. As you see the big windows, it's a question of being inside but feeling you're outside. It's carry on, please. This is if you want to learn about the forest, the rainforest, it is not only a question of walking around, it's a question of learning about what's up there in the upper world, in the canopy. So we built, with the assistance of the Global Environment Facility and the World Bank and the IFC, we built this, which is the concept put in practice. It's scientific research up in the canopy, which leads to conservation, which involves education, the sharing of knowledge, and this is an example of sustainable development, meaning to keep the original area as it was, with development, with bringing in people to work on it. Carry on. That's those are the areas of influence we are at. It's the Amazon rainforest, Machu Picchu started in '76, Sacred Valley, Cusco, and Cabo Blanco, which is quite something to look up at. Carry on. Carry on.
Okay.
Carry on.
I do have the insurance.
It's architecture. It's
okay. So no co-pay.
Marcia, Virginia, who's there?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So it's architecture has to be as indigenous, as native to the area as possible. With Denise, my wife, we've been working on using native materials. As you see, this is Machu Picchu, which is very, very simple. Carry on. Next.
No, okay, great.
Yes, research leads us to finding specimens that tend to be new species, that they are not registered. So it's fantastic that we have such a diversity of life, particularly in Machu Picchu, rainforest, cloud forest, and Puerto Vallarta area rainforest. Carry on. It's with Smithsonian, Francisco, we are very pleased to work this project with you. It's in the making now some 20 years. It's the largest arboreal mammal in the neotropics, as the orangutan is in the tropics. Carry on, please. Here we get into what's the new understanding of what should we be doing, sustainability. And that's the carbon sequestration, carbon analysis of diagnosis. We've been working with carbon Inkaterra since the 80s with sustainable travel, international STI. We started learning, and we came to measure that we had some 4 million tons in our area in the rainforest. We have under our stewardship 10,000 hectares, sort of. It's 11,000. And then we came to Machu Picchu, and here we are trying to make Machu Picchu a livable area, not only for today but for the future. UNESCO was about to put Machu Picchu down in the blacklist because of its plastic, that it was a big amount of plastic that couldn't be taken out on the train. So we envisaged that if we could compact it as the machine, which is in the back, we could take it out. So AGE, the beverage company that works in some 22, 24 countries in the world, it's a vertical company, it's a family-owned company, Peruvian. They donated to Inkaterra Association a compacting machine, and that took us to put it in Machu Picchu with the town. So we managed to help Machu Picchu to not be in the UNESCO blacklist. Carry on. And the next step was this. Organic oil was thrown to the river. So now the municipality collects it and we process it with a very simple homemade machine, to say so. And so now we have biodiesel instead of contaminating the river. Carry on. And that's another thing that happened. As we segregated plastic and oil and waste, organic waste, we imagined that it could be made into biochar. Biochar is a carbon made with no oxygen combustion, no emissions, and it's the best way. It's much better to do biochar than to do compost land fields that emit methane and carbon. So that has led us to a program of planting, reforesting, bringing back biodiversity to Machu Picchu, not the park, with 1 million trees, which is in the making right now. Carry on. Machu Picchu. It's a really wonderful Machu Picchu. It's a neat with the GreenInitiative and AGE group, the municipality and the Prime Minister of Peru and several ministers. We had a big Zoom gathering, and they all announced that Machu Picchu will be the first carbon neutral wonder of the world, and we're working on it. It's many things to be done, and we are doing them. So that's an example that may bring imagination and efforts to happen in other places. Carry on, please. And that's it. With the GreenInitiative, it is our hope that we may put together a movement with Smithsonian to bring this message and procedures to the world, so that our domestic world, Peru, may be an example of what the rest of the world could do with tourism in order to make a carbon neutral activity. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Joy. Excellent. As always, the pioneer work of Inkaterra has been outstanding and an example, not just for Peru, but the entire world. And this is an example of what can be protected and will need to be protected for the future generations. These interactions with people and the environment in a way that is providing conservation, protection of the ecosystem services, and sustainability. Achieving the carbon neutral tourism in these regions is extremely important, because that's what was going to generate the restoration and the maintenance of these ecosystems that are so precious to the world. Thank you, Joy. I'm sure we're going to have some interesting questions at the end. Let's move now to the next speaker, Francois Morin, who is the project director. Right here, I have a challenge with this screen. Okay, shifting. Okay. is the project director for LimaTours. As you know, LimaTours is another legendary, positive and alive, legendary organization responsible for overseeing, Peru Turismo in many areas also. And also, Francois is in charge of the initiative on carbon neutral travel for LimaTours, which is great. LimaTours is really began a tour operator based in Lima and founded in 1956. Another pioneer for the country, emerging into an important market for ecotourism and travel adventures. They have 5 offices offering a wide range of cultural, gastronomic, and adventure tours to clients worldwide. So, another fantastic example of Peru. LimaTours won 5 creative awards for innovation in product and service. So, Francois, please take it from here. You are really another great opportunity for participants to see the work that LimaTours.
Thank you, Francisco. Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for having us. First, I wanted to extend a warm welcome to all our partners. I mean, the ones who were able to connect from Europe, from the US, and the rest of the world, or are watching us also on the Facebook page of LimaTours. And also very happy to receive our colleagues from the Peruvian travel industry who took the time on that holiday to join, and of course Virginia, Willie, and Francisco for being part of this. I'm going to be Francisco made already introduction of LimaTours, so I'm going to be very quick. We are a sizable company. We had about 50,000 guests in 2019. These 5 offices and about 200 colleagues. We have our own operations, and maybe what I can rely is that we also very much rely on technology from since a long time to make efficiency in our processes, and that also includes sustainability, as we'll see. Maybe to pinpoint also some of the projects we've achieved in terms of technology in sustainability is through our LimaTours Foundation. We work a lot with communities, trying to integrate the sustainable experiences within our tours. Also throughout Turismo Cuida, which we are a founding member, we've approached several projects such as Plan Guayata or different works with local artists. And Plan Guayata is a very interesting one that aims to transform Ollantaytambo into the first living Inkaterra, into a sustainable destination. This is a typical city where buses go through, there's contamination, there's everything. So here it's about doing that destination what it should be, a place where people want to go and stay for the time. Kabaknan was also a very interesting project that we led. And then the work, obviously, with trade associations such as the Adventure Travel Association, but the APTAI as well, here locally have been very, very helpful, because I think this is really a topic where collaboration helps a lot. And very recently, very happy to have been also been awarded the Peru brand. So we're now a Peru brand ambassador. So towards our journey towards carbon neutral travel, well, it started really with our work with Rainforest Alliance. This is a work that has been going on for many years, and we've now achieved a very, very good level, because our score is about 99.5% for our national operations. So this was about integrating sustainability in our very processes and in all our product offering, working with suppliers, working with local partners, NGOs, everybody within the trade. And then our journey towards towards carbon footprint was started with GreenInitiative, where we started to calculate and compensate then our carbon footprint as a company. We started that work a few years ago, and we're very happy about the collaboration with GreenInitiative. It has been a very good introduction for us. But obviously what we're here is because we wanted to go further and also include and have a discussion with our clients around how can we make carbon neutral travel, the trips to Peru carbon neutral, even carbon positive. And that's why we started with GreenInitiative and Inkaterra, the Forest Friend project, of which Marcia already told a little bit. So this project is located in an area of very strong biodiversity, where I think any action has a very, very strong impact. So this is a project, it is an area that is well loved by our travelers, as Joe knows. And this initiative aims to plant 1 million trees by 2030. This is a number that we would love to achieve. So this is a project with both social and environmental impact. So we're sure that it should be beneficial to our clients. And this, of course, cannot be done without engaging our clients and then engaging travelers on the ground. We would like to start the conversations with the passengers, and this goes through, as you can see, through integrating these issues within the guides training, and also bringing that to the travelers when they come. So, as a nutshell here, we basically want to involve our staff, our suppliers, our clients, and of course then our guests into that journey. So what's our proposal? First, we've had a few iterations in there, but we started with calculating the average carbon footprint for a trip, which involves travel by road, domestic plane tickets, and the different activities, including within the trip. And then there's two ways that we propose to do this compensation. The first would be the acquisition of UN certified carbon emission reductions, equivalent to about 1 ton of CO2, which is carbon footprint of an average trip in Peru. And then the acquisition of a native tree, so plantation of a native tree through the Forest Friend project in the Madre de Dios region. So this is combining a short-term impact, which is taking in that carbon out or avoiding that is emitted, and then planting a tree in an area where we know that it's going to give jobs to people, it's going to create and preserve an ecosystem that is so important to life on planet. We are going for a B2B price of $12 for that compensation per person per trip. We suggest obviously our clients to integrate it in trip packages by default, but this is obviously also optional in individual quotes, and we want to propose it to travelers if they are not compensated before, that they have the possibility to do it once in Peru. This digital certificate that you see on the right will also be emitted online, so no paper. As we are a paperless company, and there can be access to resources in the forestfriend.eco. So there's already a first good version, which is going to be built on, and obviously a regular audit by GreenInitiative, so that there's also, obviously we're not allowed to do any, well, 2020 was going to be a trial phase. 2021 now will be our trial phase to collect our client and guest feedback and look into ways to increase the impact and have as many clients as we can participating in that initiative. Hopefully integrated in all our tours. So LimaTours offers a variety of tools to support the travelers' journeys locally. And really, we thought one of them is Massy, and we thought, why not use this platform for promoting carbon neutral travel to Peru? So it's Massy. It's a digital white label assistance platform for our passengers, and we use different channels to connect to them. Besides obviously the guide, which is we use a variety of our assistance platform, Massy, uses a variety of channels to contact the customers, and we are integrating then the carbon neutral within that, the communications within these channels, this is emails or WhatsApp. These will lead them then the passengers to a landing page where they're going to be able to download their certificate. browse the Forest Friend project website, and obviously ask the guide for any questions that they may have around that issue. So here to summarize, I think, well, carbon neutral travel overall is part of an overall commitment of our company leadership in sustainability, and this is a normal continuation of that work we've been doing with communities and around our processes. We want to work out a very easy and affordable solution for our clients, to be able to integrate that concept into the travels. And we also would like to make sustainability an integral part of the experience for our guests, and show it in a positive way. So that is not as a vision of doom, but this is something really positive, and they can see that their travel has impact. And finally, well, this is our journey so far. As you can see from the stairs here, there's a long way to go. We want really that this would have a strong impact on our destination and the preservation of all our ecosystems and our beautiful destination. So it's something really we are keen to learn about, and I think we're going to learn a lot about with Willy's presentation. So thank you very much, and I will leave the parole to Willy.
Thank you very much, Francois. It's been a great presentation, a lot of innovation by your company. I think it's another strong example how Peru really is taking the lead in this kind of initiative. As I was saying before, it's a first big step. Now we are moving into where are those areas that need trees, where are those areas that need reforestation, what are those degraded areas that need to be protected and rearticulated in conservation corridors. So this is the key is in the details, because how to put together those ecosystems, how to protect those ecosystems. You can see in the case of LimaTours and Inkaterra, how those ecosystems are precious for Peru and how many areas around those ecosystems can also be degraded. So it's really important to develop these strategies that have a component that will generate jobs in the case of reforestation, a component that can construct productive landscapes with production and use of wood, and also natural landscapes. The strategies, how to put that together, we are starting with Madre de Dios because it's one of the key areas that requires a lot of reconstruction of important conservation corridors, and also looking at other areas of Peru. So this is a fantastic first step. If we get a greater sector of the tourism industry, hotels and others, this will make a transformation in country that can lead the industry of carbon neutral for the entire country. So thank you again, Francois. Let's move next to the next speaker. The next speaker is Dr. Willy Legrand. He's a professor of hospitality management at the University of Applied Science located in Bonn in Germany. It's an international university, and Willy has been the lead author of the textbooks in sustainability in the hospitality industry. He's an authority in describing the principles of sustainable operations, which is extremely important, especially for this sector of carbon, and in the how to do it. What are the next steps, especially now after the COVID situation. Also, he has a recent book on the social entrepreneurship in the hospitality industry, principles and strategies for change. It's extremely important topics for this new regeneration, reconstruction, and revitalization of the tourism industry after the COVID, the COVID wave that we are getting now. Also, together with 80 other experts, he has provided answers on the most pressing sustainability challenges every month on the Hospitality Net World Panel on Sustainability that he chairs. So please connect to that link, connect to that network. Hospitality Network panel, and that will help you to provide guidance and direction in how we can achieve a lot of these goals that we are planning for. So with that brief introduction, I would like to again to allow you, Willie, to take the lead now and show us the leadership that you've been providing for many years, and thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Federico, Francois, and Francisco as well for organizing this important webinar, in fact, and also to my co-panelists. That was excellent insights. Those initiatives on the ground are really showing the way forward. So anyways, here are a few of my thoughts in 10 minutes on climate actions in tourism in times of VUCA, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we are very much in the midst of a VUCA world. Why, you may ask? Well, it is highly volatile, as the challenges we face really are quite unstable and at times unknown in duration, but ultimately not so hard to understand because knowledge is around, it's available. It is also uncertain, not so much on the fact that we do not know the cause of climate emergency. It's not like we don't know the cause of biodiversity collapse, or that we don't have access to predictive models on the effect of those crises. We do have that, but it is an uncertain world as we've yet to see the depth of change and transformation that's actually required to deal with the uncertainty. It is also complex world, mostly because of the interconnected variables, such as those linkages between climate change, biodiversity collapse, and the pandemic. This is overwhelming for many, including, in fact, many entrepreneurs that I talk to. And the natural reaction is simply to go on. And there's too many of us really acting as if just everything is normal. And the last component really is an ambiguous world we live in. There are no precedents like this. Sure, we've had mass extinctions before, but we're now in a sixth mass extinction. But never before did humans have really such an impact on the planet that it really constitutes a new geological era. As you know, it's known as the Anthropocene, and it's led not only, but not limited to the anthropogenic climate change from greenhouse gases, in particular carbon emission, which is experiencing still a concentration in the atmosphere. And that's largely due to deforestations and emissions from fossil fuel. So that's the more dangerous curve, in fact, that humanity hasn't been able to flatten, the one on carbon, which is known as the Keeling curve. Now, in the words of UN Secretary General Guterres, it is imperative that we rebuild the tourism sector in a safe, equitable, and climate-friendly manner. Well, we know that the planet is a crowded place, and destinations can be as well, where the use of natural resources is often beyond its capacity. And in destination management, I think we know a thing or two about carrying capacity. So if we sort of take a planetary selfie, we soon find out that a finite world we operate is with a series of budgets, and those budgets, as you know, are called planetary boundaries. And based on that work, the original work from the Stockholm Resilience Center of the 9 boundaries that have been identified, globally 4 are being trespassed or over budget, including climate change, biodiversity loss, the key 2 boundaries, as well as nitrogen and phosphorus cycles. So when we consider the various tipping points, the points at which there are irreversible changes, whether we talk about primary forest, whether we talk about coral reefs or the permafrost, well, VUCA takes on an entire new meaning, because ultimately there are very few challenges facing humanity that are more complex than our climate crisis and the risk of all the types that it endangers. So for me, there's a little bit of an above and below the water situation in tourism, in fact. And I plot this into an S-curve. And the basic logic behind any S-curve is that nothing grows forever. And that what we're noticing is probably a skewed S-curve here, because many systems, when we think about biodiversity, have taken a long time to grow, but experience a sudden collapse. So the S-curve is really a great tool, as it helps to identify sort of the pattern of growth and the pattern of decay. And when the curve takes off and we see accelerated growth, most are quite ecstatic. And you hear this in the business, but then comes a point when the rate of growth slows down, eventually leveling off, reaching a second inflection point before descending into decline. And here, the risk of non-action are increasing, because as I've mentioned earlier, the planetary tipping points, which are being crossed is just accelerating. So VUCA is sort of a fitting way of thinking, because our climate catastrophe guarantees, in fact, a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. On the other hand, however, the understanding of that S-curve pattern can perhaps help us to plan for the future, to adapt, to innovate, to reinvent, and to build that resilience we're all talking about. It boosts also this idea of system thinking and creativity. And really, all of this is needed in great dosage, really, coming up. So as we know, human history is not a linear story. And based on some of the work from Bill Sharp, I mean, perhaps you've come across it. It's called the 3 Horizon Framework. And also some of the work from Roman Xanarik in a book actually just released called The Good Ancestor. There are 3 possible pathways for civilization, and each following sort of an S-curve, as you will see on my slide. So business as usual, which is also the strategy of bouncing back, I often hear from the industry, to the world that's pre-pandemic, and thus with a general failure to respond to the climate crisis that basically ensures a breakdown. An inadequate response to the climate crisis takes us on a path where which you call reform here. In fact, it's doing a piecemeal approach. We sort of push the point of no return in time. De facto, we're buying us some time by doing tweaking, but the problems are still rampant. And arguably, there's a lot to say that this is the current trajectory that we're still in. So the third pathway really is that transformation. And it is fundamentally a radical shift in the value system. There are actually competing visions of what that transformation can be looking like on how to deal with climate issues. Those that are supporting a general behavioral response to this, others are betting heavily on major technological breakthrough. So in principle, there are competing views. And if you look in the words of Buckminster Fuller, I quite like this quote here: you really never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So the transformation, and most notably really dealing with climate crisis, it takes sort of a cathedral thinking that is betting for the long term on all the decisions that are made today. And this is where Peru is actually taking a lead. And this is heartwarming, really. So more practically and betting for the long term, how do we enact that green recovery that we're talking about, that green recovery? And more precisely, how can the tourism hospitality industry benefit from that green recovery? Well, the most critical component here, in fact, is policy making. And this is not my result. This is the results of a recent research conducted by the University of Oxford, the London School of Economics, Columbia University, and University of Cambridge. As American economist and Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz recently argued that public spending on environmental and labor-intensive projects are really essential for recovery and more efficient than tax cuts. So then 5 policies are identified that offer a high potential on 2 things. They offer a high potential on economic multiplier and also on climate impact. And those are potential for, the 5 policies are, as you see here: clean physical infrastructure, building efficiency retrofits, investment in education and training, natural capital investment, clean R&D, as well as rural support. And in hospitality and tourism, we have links to every single one of those policies. And businesses, such as we've heard earlier, such as Inkaterra, show really best practices here, having tackled every single one of those factors in their business endeavors. And so financing that recovery is essential, and that's where destinations and institutions at destinations come into the game. And when we think about a transition to low or zero carbon tourism economy, that can take place only when the 3 key stakeholders play a role, which we've listened to today: the business, as in the case of Inkaterra, the institutions at those destinations, and the travelers. So while there's still very few examples of best practices in zero energy balance or energy plus hotels, these are becoming more common. And the same as hotel and destinations dedicating to repairing the natural capital at the destinations. They are operating it. So I coined this model sort of the production of sustainability, but it's actually better known, and its equivalent, it's regenerative hospitality. So I'm sort of tempted to call this a sustainability without limits, in fact, where regeneration is the norm and not the exception. Because the sustainability agenda really is not only or no longer simply about conserving resources. It is about inclusiveness. It is about employee and guest well-being. It is about stimulating the local economy. These are all part of the sustainability agenda. In fact, some argue that you should forget sustainability and you should think regeneration. Because, why do they say this? Well, far too long, we've sort of taken sustainability as the duty to minimize damage. So there's an urgent need, in fact, to regenerate life sources rather than allowing to be sustained in increasingly degraded conditions. And this is where, you know, experience comes into the realm of generation. It's about putting more nature in the hotels, along the same line of fostering a regenerative connection to the outside world, our surrounding, both in social but also in environmental terms. It's in addition of our infrastructure, it's the design of experience, it's the inclusion, the natural element. And sort of in line with circularity approach, the focus is on regeneration, leaving the place simply better than you found it, coming back home healthier, physically, spiritually than you left. In fact, the argument is that we can transform the meaning of VUCA. Tourism post-pandemic requires vision, understanding, clarity, agility. And this is really what the case of Peru is all about betting on. It's an imminent world where net zero is going to be mere compliance and net positive is going to be the acceptable standard. This is about betting for the future. Now, remember that we're looking at a renewable infrastructure and a high efficiency infrastructure that would cost about 2.5% of the total economic activity of the world. So 2.5% of the global GDP. Sure, that's a lot of money, but that still leaves 97.5% of economic activities to go for somewhere else. So just to finish on this, a quote from our architect, Patrick Burke, in the places where we live, work, learn and heal, creating a healthy green environment has become a touchstone of quality of life. And as part of life's expectation, it should not just be sustainable, but also regenerative. With this said, thanks very much. That concludes my short presentation. I look forward to the discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. We enjoy very much. It's really a lot of innovation. It puts together all the cycle of how we should be doing this business. I can see at the core of what you just say, the whole process of carbon neutral, how we can achieve it, how we can achieve this whole circle of regeneration, regenerative, refreshness in our life, and also maintain biodiversity, consistent services, and contribute to the economic development. So it's all perfect right there. I think Peru is leading some of these already. Requires more energy, more partners associated to that. But I think it's a good beginning. Thank you for your time. So let me look now. We have a number of questions that have come so far. So let me look through the questions we have. Let's start with a question, a two-part question for Marcia. Marcia, this is for you. Why is it relevant to compensate, and what other measures can companies take for climate actions? That's the first part.
Thank you very much for the question. Well, compensation or carbon offsetting is like crowdfunding, for climate action. It provides a direct financial contribution to conservation projects that require this financial to continue their biodiversity and ecosystems conservation efforts. However, us in GreenInitiative, we apply the concept of carbon mitigation hierarchy proposed by Smithsonian Institute. For further information, you can just get in touch with us, and you can provide you with more details on that.
Okay, great. The second part is how companies can engage in the Forest Friends project.
Well, we have a standard agreement format that we use for companies that are willing to engage in the Forest Friends project. We provide these companies with the necessary tools and training so that they can use by themselves our online platform. And we work together with them to develop the development of these carbon neutral travel experiences. So that's basically how these companies can engage.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. There is a question that came for Joy Kecklin. Joy, the question is speaking of future travel trends, do you foresee a change of mindset among travelers in a post-COVID scenario? And how does Inkaterra help travelers embrace a culture of sustainability?
Let's say that solitude is a very scarce commodity. Let's say that many people will like to enhance traveling within themselves to faraway countries, to exotic destinations where they may find a better side of themselves. We are all wondering about ourselves. And traveling inspires us to learn more about the outer world and about ourselves. So how Inkaterra matches with this possible larger market? The market won't change that much. Let's remember the Spanish flu didn't change that much in mankind, of mankind. So what Inkaterra is all about is faraway places where you may have your own little casita, your cabin, your standalone place to stay at, and be by yourself with the sound of nature, with the sight of nature, with local guides that may take you around with their native expressions of and understanding, but with the words of the Western world that may tell you what you're experiencing as you go about nature. And carbon neutrality, definitely, it's one thing to look at, and to enhance, and to promote, and to tell that by our being part of this understanding that every movement, every human action produces an effect. The butterfly effect actually exists, and it's in carbon. We produce carbon on a daily basis, on a minute basis. How can we mitigate? How can we understand what to do, what not to do, and how to compensate our existence on Earth by assisting nature to comply with its social function? Let's not put nature aside, let's be part of nature.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I have experienced that myself, rejuvenating, being in solitude and enjoying and feeling part of the environment in those wonderful places in Peru. Related to that, Joy, how is Inkaterra measuring and compensating its carbon footprint in their destinations?
We started with Sustainable Travel International years ago, and then we, at the same time, we got involved in a, let's say, scientific means of measuring carbon, which was to have some plots which were measured every year with the University of Leeds, UK. That way, it was not just a storytelling, to say so, in those days when carbon was not an issue, but it was an actual mathematical measurement that was carried on and still is from time to time with different friends now that we have worked together for 20, 30 years now. So it's we need to now with Green Initiative, we are bringing up awareness, and with you, Francisco, and Smithsonian, we are bringing up awareness, and with the AGE group, the beverage company, and it's coming to be not only a concept, a verbal concept, but it's an action, and that action takes us to learn more about what are the indigenous plants in Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is it's an icon. Mm-hmm. So forest, wildlife, wild forests have ruined a third, mm-hmm. literally a third of the Machu Picchu park. Mm-hmm. So we are working on how to not only plant trees, but to plant biodiversity. Mm-hmm. As we did within the Machu Picchu Pueblo Hotel in Inkaterra in the 80s, 90s, when it was a tea plantation and cattle farming, we brought back life, looking upon what the birds fed on, mm-hmm. and planting those fruit trees and plants that would feed them. Now we are working on a million trees. Mm-hmm. To not to have a monoculture, but to have a biodiversity scenario to bring back life to Machu Picchu areas.
Excellent, excellent. That's an inspiration. That should be the inspiration for the entire Peru. You know, having Machu Picchu be at the front of this initiative could really lead many other projects and opportunities for Peru in many different environments. I think this is really a pioneer work. Thank you, Joy. I have some questions here, a couple questions also for Francois. Francois, what is the difference between the Forest Friends project and other projects proposed by other organizations?
Okay, this is, I think, well, Forest Friends project is an interesting one because we are basically connecting to one of the nice products, which is one of the key products, which is obviously the jungle. No, this is an area for me that is under threat right now. It is an area that has the strongest biodiversity in the world. So whatever impact, whatever you can do in an area like this, will have a much stronger impact that you can do by planting a tree in maybe in Spain or in other parts of the world. So this is also because all the contribution will go actually towards also planting trees and employing more people and making more activity in that area. Again, other activities that maybe, I mean, there's a lot of illegal mining around also going on in that area. So I think anything that can help protect the Peruvian Amazon is really key for us. Mm-hmm. So I believe this is a nice way to connect to the actual, to make a contribution into Peru for our passengers.
Great. I think that go ahead.
And there's an area also. I mean maybe Federico will answer it. Also about communities, no? Because this is this is a little bit the work we've been doing with communities for a long time on tourism, and then that future work that is going on with carbon neutral. It's obviously we need to link it because the first ones that are going to help us to restore these ecosystems are actually the people living there. So it's going to be not only work with guides, with our clients, and getting the guests aware, but obviously involving directly all local communities in that work. And I would love a way for us to be participating and to have closer links to these communities and understand how what is the strongest impact, not what can be, if the contributions can have the strongest, what contribution could have the strongest impact into the preservation of ecosystems.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, and it's really a good inspiration to have Machu Picchu and also places like Madre de Dios with the highest biodiversity in the world being the recipients of these benefits of the plantation and reconstruction of degraded environments. So it's really a great opportunity to expand this to a national scale. Related to that, why compensate only Peru travel and not the entire trip? This is another question that came in for you.
Yes, this is a valid question. We actually started with programs that allow to compensate. It's just realizing the full cost. We've seen the opportunity to look into what is the travel into Peru manages, and then the work basically of the airline is another work. No, the work of air travel to reduce the carbon footprint of air travel in there, and the compensation. We will be glad also to propose a solution to compensate the whole trip, but if this is the cost can become an obstacle. So we don't want that to be an obstacle. So first, starting with destination Peru and saying everything you're going to do in Peru is carbon positive, or as we say, no, carbon neutral or positive, is a great achievement already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. I think maybe at different levels, you can offer the different options for some travelers. They can compensate the whole trip, or they can compensate portions. Maybe what is the minimum that they should do to be able to make a significant change. That's me thinking out of the, a little bit.
It will require the discussion with our clients to understand what is possible to add, no? Because they may also have other ways to compensate from a global level. So exactly. This has to be complementary.
Yeah, great, thank you. I have some question here for Dr. Legrand. Let's see here. There has been a great deal of learning accomplished over the past 6 months or 8 months because of the survival to the COVID and adaptation to the new normal. Obviously sanitation guidelines and digitalization, all of this is going to be part of the tourism industry. But how can or should hotels and destinations build long-term resilience and equality? And equally important, perhaps, how do we go about activating a green recovery in hospitality?
Right. Well, this is the $100 million question, I think, that you're asking me here. I wish I would have all the answers, but green recovery, I've talked a little bit about it. I mean, it requires investment. So it's a multi-stakeholder move, because you need to actually activate the economy. You need to have a system whereby, such as what Peru is showing here in looking at how do we recover in terms of biodiversity investment, etc. But if you're looking at the other part, though, because there's two parts of the question, there's also this thing with resiliency and thus risk, right? And then there's the other part with recovery. And so if you set aside the pandemic for a minute and you look at tourism destinations, there's many tourism destinations that are located in hazard-prone areas. I mean, it's mountainous, it's rivers, it's coastlines, and they are often the high-demand regions, but there also are the regions that could be more affected from climate change issues. It could be affected by biodiversity issues. Mm-hmm. And we know that hotels sort of have played that they can be an island of resilience. I think we've seen this in the aftermath of disaster, because they provide support to first responders or local communities. We've seen this in March and April as well. But actually, if you look at research, academic research, it suggests that actually many hotels tend to be actually poorly prepared for that. And that's often due to a set of factors. It's perhaps a lack of money, a lack of knowledge, the low risk perception. So hotels feel deconnected, quite a few of them, with the risk around them. And also, at times, the lack of responsibility, because often whenever there's a disaster that happens, there is some kind of outside disaster emergency management team that's actually supposed to take care of this. So it's outsourced to other agencies somehow, and they should be taking care of that, while the hotel really just focus on recovery. This is what we're seeing now. There's even research that shows that some hoteliers have got a little bit of an attitude of laissez-faire. They're preparing for disaster. That means waste of resources, and many prefer to deal with a crisis on an ad hoc basis. So when a crisis comes, then we'll deal with it. But and this is the big but, knowing that hotels, not only hotels, I'm focusing a little bit on hotels here, but they play such an important role in that disaster risk reduction, that resilience, and eventually that recovery. There is sort of a bit of a spillover effect here to the surrounding communities, and so this ad hoc approach is a bit problematic. Now, just to finish on the last part of the question in terms of long-term resiliencies, well, the argument is that hotels and destinations should seek certification, just like you guys are doing with carbon neutrality, but at this time it's looking at their risk management. So, and there's really 3 steps, just shortly. It's, you have to analyze your risk at the destination and create a profile, and that's destination specific hazard or vulnerability, and that could be flood, earthquake, but it's also climate change, it's also biodiversity and ecosystem services, etc. Second, you establish a disaster risk and crisis management procedure. Third, you have a plan to communicate when crisis hit. I mean, these are things that I think now, hopefully, we have more of that happening at destinations and in the hotels as well.
Excellent, excellent. And related to that, post-COVID-19 world, it's still an issue and will be an issue for a while in terms of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. What are the priorities that tourism and hotel strategies need to be put in place, for the years to come?
Yeah, I think it's another good question. I wish I would have all the answers to this, but when you look at this, many will be looking, I think, at post-COVID, at the business performance. I'm talking business performance with a big P here. So how well did they take care of their employees? How well did they manage within the community? And people will remember that. They will say, this property, this destination really tried to involve community in decision making. This company supported their employees. They will remember that. And so have we learned anything from that crisis? Have we learned from the pandemic about the biodiversity crisis, right? Have we learned about ecosystem services, these services that's given for free for us? And so I think this is where what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of learning to be done, and ultimately action needs to take place. And this is why I think this was so neat to listen to Francois and to Joe, to Jose as well, and Marcia, because this is what needs to happen, is action on the terrain, just like you're showing the world how to do it.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. We are running short of time here, but we want to go back. Thank you for your answers. We're going to go back to Virginia, our United Nations specialist leading this coordinated, world effort. So Virginia, seeing what you've seen in Peru as basically a potential model for not just for Peru, for many other countries, how do you see this vision of getting the tourism industry really involved in this transformation process of carbon neutrality, or towards carbon neutrality in the next few years?
Thank you, Francisco. I mean, I think it is quite clear for all of us now that climate action is an integral element of the resilience of the sector, the resilience that we want to build, both taking responsibility for mitigation and also evolving in terms of adaptation and restoration, so that we ensure we're making or leaving a positive footprint, both environmentally and socially. I think what needs to happen, Francisco and colleagues, is that we manage to agree on a common vision. So far, the sector has been advancing in a quite fragmented way. There are many initiatives on climate action which are running successfully, not necessarily operating in the tourism sector, from which our sector could learn. And I guess that if we could define this common vision with some governing objectives, that would definitely guide governments to develop the necessary policies. If you think about policies these days, I mentioned we're lagging behind in tourism, but also if you look at the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, they are also only mentioning tourism in more or less 40% of them. And when they talk about tourism as a vulnerable sector, but they don't think about tourism as a solution or as a contributor to the fight of climate change, which we want to contribute to. That vision could help enterprises that are normally the more advanced taking action to aggregate their efforts to achieve collective impact, to benchmark each other, learn from each other. So it would be definitely an accelerator. And thirdly, for the travelers, I guess, it would present a much clearer picture if we all would speak the same language. So we are working on that. Really a pleasure to have now the Peru case to illustrate that type of action in three levels and involving destinations, businesses, and tourists. And definitely willing and offering the Sustainable Tourism Program of the One Planet Network as a platform for all of us to continue this discussion and advance towards a common vision so that we scale up as soon as possible.
Great, great. So now that we have you on the screen, how can we attract the United Nations, your program, to collaborate with Peru to help Peru create this vision, create some real good pilot initiative that will move fast, and also the strategies to be able to implement this in a fast track. I think of course, it's a cooperation with the private sector, the government, and multiple stakeholders. In our particular case, we wanted this to be also science-based. We need to guide the structure of how these forest or restoration processes will take place to create the maximum impact for conservation and also for ecosystem services and for the local communities. So Madre de Dios and Machu Picchu are two, hot spots from the many perspectives that you can see. And for tourism, they are really symbolic places for destinations. So I think what United Nations is planning during this also decade of reconstruction, restoration, is really important. If we can get those two initiatives ingrained in the whole process of Peru for the next 10 years, I think Peru can potentially reach carbon neutrality in 10 years, 10, 15 years. I think at least for the sector of tourism, I think will be something not only to show for Peru, but also for the international community, the neighboring countries. Could be a destination in terms of the case studies on how you can see this process in action that will create major transformation.
I couldn't agree more, Francisco. I think that political support is now needed. I think the action on the ground is relevant enough for probably both ministries of tourism and environment to see how this can be supported and scale up, and also connected with the negotiations of NDCs for Peru. In addition to what you mentioned about the decade of restoration, there is also running the decade of oceans.
That's right.
Which includes a very strong focus on nature-based solutions. So in a way, we are within the system, all connected, and just I guess needing to disseminate the message and continue exchanging with those in other parts of the world that are going through the same process, so we can see how each destination at the end of the day will choose the way, but in a manner that it is connected. Sustainability will remain context sensitive, so we will not have one recipe for every destination, but we can have a framework. So yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to working with all of you on that.
Yeah, we look forward to having you in Peru and injecting some of the United Nations initiative energy throughout the system in Peru and helping us to build that vision and strategies. Well, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you to all the participants, to invited speakers. This has been a great first step. We should do this more often. I think there is plenty of material and initiative and an evolution of this process to be able to get something going on the regular basis. Please maintain, let's grow this network. The initiatives have to grow if we want to make a transformation for Peru and also for the world. And I think we have the opportunity, you know, the revolutions happen with a small group of people. I think this is a small enough group of people to start transforming the new Peru, coming back from COVID very strong and launching, you know, a new future for sustainable development and conservation in Peru based on ecotourism. Thank you, everybody. Please, you know, stay positive. We'll get through this. I will get to the point where we bring back thousands of people to these fantastic destinations in Peru from all over the world. Thank you for your participation, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.